Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we're going to be talking about SmackDown from June the 10th, 2022. A big episode of SmackDown where the Intercontinental Championship was decided and we got some Money in the Bank build. But before we get into that, let's talk about news and notes. The first news and note has been the Stephanie McMahon drama that has been going on for the past week or so. Dave Meltzer has put out some information. Other people have also put out information. Let's try to clean this up as much as we possibly can. So, as we know, back in May of 2022, Stephanie McMahon put on the Twitter machine that she was going on a leave of absence. It was immediate. She said to focus on her family. Everybody started saying, okay, that was kind of it. But then they started doing some digging. And all of the digging started to find out that maybe there were some complaints about Stephanie's job performance. Now, if you follow the investor calls, you know that there was some discussion about Stephanie's job performance long before her leave of absence actually occurred. There were conference calls in which they were asked directly about sponsorships and why WWE does not see sponsorships the same as UFC, which sees them in the hundreds of millions, and WWE only in the tens of millions. Stephanie gave some excuses or whatever, but ultimately this all came to a head in May. Now that the wrestling media is now starting to catch up to it, the Business Insider put out an article where supposedly an insider within WWE, quote unquote, buried Stephanie. So this is what Dave Meltzer wrote. Quote, WWE has officially started the public burial of Stephanie McMahon on the way out. The company did outright tell a reporter with our website negative things and basically knocked her job performance a few weeks after she took the leave of absence, and they were clearly attempting to get the story out. It ended up with a story in Business Insider where they said that her leaving was part of a corporate role and business shakeup decided by Vince McMahon, essentially trying to get out that her father fired her and she didn't leave on her own. That isn't the case and even contradicts their own story as she was the one who wanted out. From the burial this week, I'd say odds of her returning have greatly diminished, but time does heal wounds, and she has been with the company for decades and until a few weeks ago was the public face of the company. She wasn't going to come back soon either way. Now, if you speak Meltzer, then you know he's trying to play both hands against each other. He said that, essentially trying to get out of her father fired her. She is not fired. Stephanie McMahon is a executive at a publicly traded organization. If she were released, fired from her contract, they would have to make that information public. All right. And then they can't lie about it or they get sued. So her publicly saying she's going on a leave of absence means just that. Now, the reasoning may be kind of wishy-washy and you could play with that, but she is not fired. That's the first thing. If she was fired, they would have to say she was released from her contract or something like that. Again, that's something the investors need to know. Then it says that that they're contradicting themselves. It's like, well, there was no WWE story. There was a Stephanie McMahon story that she was leaving to go focus on her family. Then it says that, of course, unnamed source. So, of course, that's how the unnamed sources go. Now, the Business Insider article is behind a paywall, which is a problem. Some people don't want to pay the money to see it, and I'm one of those people, so I didn't. But there are other websites, thankfully, wrestling websites, for us that double-checked this information. Now, here comes WrestleZone. Here's what they have to say. It says, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter previously reported that McMahon will return after this leave of absence, which came out of nowhere to most of the company. It had been noted that she wanted to focus on her family as she previously had picked up some of Triple H's responsibilities while he was recovering from his cardiac event and health-related issues. Business Insider reported that Vince McMahon was seemingly responsible for Stephanie's exit, but this wasn't confirmed. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer subsequently reported that Stephanie decided to step away rather than being forced out. In an update, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, some members of the company who had been involved before Nick Khan joined WWE made it clear that Vince didn't push Stephanie out. However, some new hires noted that there were performance issues, though these points of improvement were not responsible for her exit. Either way, Stephanie reportedly made the decision herself. Sean Ross Sapp also confirmed the departure of WWE Head of Global Sales and Partnerships Claudine Lillian. he wrote that she was let go, as she was not viewed as a great hire. He also cited sources who noted that there were a number of areas of improvement, quote unquote, in the department. For example, the company would like to sell sponsors on a long-term basis, whereas it's currently handled on a single show deal. Now, Claudine Lillian, her job is she was head of global sales and partnerships. So she was one of the people who was involved with the sponsorship concept. She has done over the course of a year or so, she had done a lot of interviews. A lot of interviews. So we're going to go through a little bit of this stuff before we go back to Stephanie, because I want to talk about Claudine Lillian for a little while. So she was hired in April of 2021 to be the head of global sales and partnerships. She formerly worked for Fox Sports and had worked with the NBA and the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So through Variety and several other interviews, she talked about her love of WWE and her obsession with WWE's mission statement of putting smiles on faces. And she says that, you know, she's very proud to work there because of the passion that not only they have as far as people who work in the office, but also the passion of the fans. And she talked about the community service projects and how much she loved that kind of stuff. And that she was one of the people who brought in the cosmetic companies to work with the women's wrestlers. Now, we know that this came out with Bianca Belair doing business with Rihanna and Savage X Fenty or whatever that was. Which is actually something that went to work with Jade Cargill as well. So in another interview, she said that part of the problem with selling WWE, and I kind of figured this would be the case, was people's preconceived notions about WWE. That she used that exact concept, people's preconceived notions about WWE, and that when she went on a client-by-client basis, meaning that every time she tried to get a new client, she had to, quote, re-educate partners about what their content is. So she didn't get into any details, but it seems that WWE's past might actually be in the way of its future. In other words, people know what WWE is because it has such a rich history and been around for so long. But as per the usual, as we come across on this channel, that ain't all positive. People remember the WWF as blood and guts and sex and people getting hit in there with steel chairs and a bunch of other stuff. Even though it hasn't been that way in over a decade, that's what it was when it was at its most popular. With a guy drinking beer in the middle of the ring and some poor schmuck getting smashed in the head with 13 chair shots right in front of his family. That's what WWE was when it was at its most popular. Not exactly playing so well now. So it seems that whether it's Claudine Lillian or Stephanie McMahon, that is becoming the problem that WWE has to initially or exactly resell itself to every client. You know, looking at what WWE used to be and what it is now. And that they said, I specifically was shuddered at the concept of, you know, she's saying that she had to, quote, re-educate all of their business partners. Now, there is some confusion about whether Claudine Lillian is even gone. Let's go to wrestling headlines. And somebody says, quote, another top WWE executive is set to leave the company soon, and there are conflicting reports on who made the decision for Stephanie McMahon to take a leave of absence from her role as WWE Chief Brand Officer. McMahon hired Claudine Lillian to work as WWE Senior Vice President and Head of Global Sales and Partnerships in late 2021. Lillian, who billed herself as a WWE employee and fan in her Twitter bio, previously held senior leadership roles at Fox Corp, Fox Sports, and Fox News Group, and was hired to be a key member of WWE's senior management team, responsible for overseeing day-to-day operations and leading WWE's sales organization while expanding its roster of sponsorships and promotional partnerships. A new report from Business Insider's Claire Atkinson notes that Lillian has confirmed she is leaving the company. Lillian's LinkedIn and Twitter bios still list her as working for the company, so it looks as though she is still there for now. In an interesting note, Matt Men's Andrew Zarian recently mentioned that Lillian was already released. Zarian's late May report noted that investors were wondering why WWE's ad sales and sponsorships weren't performing that well, before Stephanie McMahon announced her leave of absence to be with the family on May 19th. Zarian noted that, quote, a month ago, or sometime in mid to late April, Lillian went over to try and, quote, handle the issues, but she was, quote, released around the same time, which would have been mid to late April. Zarian also noted that WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan had taken over all of those advertising and sponsorship responsibilities. Zarian had also stated that there was some internal doubt put on McMahon and her abilities as an executive, and that a lot of doubt started with when she absorbed some of the responsibilities held by WWE co-president Michelle Wilson, who was let go in January of 2020. McMahon announced back on May 19th that she was taking a leave of absence to be with her family, indicating that she would be back at some point because WWE was a part of her life. Many people within WWE expected her back as well. It was reported by multiple sources that Khan was taking over the McMahon's duties while she is away, while WWE is also putting out a job listing for Director of Brand and Marketing. It was then revealed today that WWE has hired Catherine Newman to work as the new Executive Vice President and Head of Marketing. The new report from Business Insider claims, and this became the important part right here, it says the new report from Business Insider claims McMahon was replaced in her corporate role as a part of the shakeup by her father, Vince McMahon. The Business Insider report is protected by a paywall and appears in many outlets. Just ran with the headline of Vince McMahon forced Stephanie into a leave of absence without actually reading the full report on the Business Insider website. The report does not directly say Vince pushed Stephanie out. Furthermore, Dave Meltzer noted today on the Wrestling Observer Forum that there is no truth to any report that says Vince forced Stephanie out and that Stephanie chose to take a leave of absence on her own. Then they go into what Vince said on Pat McAfee show about, expecting more from the family and that sort of thing. The Business Insider report said WWE has a goal of generating $100 million annually via brand partnerships, while keeping an eye on the success of UFC in the same space. WWE brought in close to $20 million in advertising and related revenue during the first 3 months of this year, while ad sales are executed by WWE's programming partners such as NBCU's USA Network and Peacock, plus A&E and Fox. WWE reportedly has that $100 million per year goal in mind, which is something Stephanie recently touched on during the Q3 2021 earnings call held back in November. During that November earnings call, an investor asked about sponsorship opportunities, something he believes WWE has historically under-monetized. He also asked about WWE's ultimate opportunity and the strategy to get to that goal over the next several years. Stephanie responded, "There is no reason why in the next 3 to 5 years we couldn't be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And in terms of strategy, it's really the 4 key areas that I laid out earlier in my remarks. The content integrations, our talent, superstar brands, digital, social, and international." That's what I was talking about earlier about, she was being asked. I think I may have said it was a different conference call than, I think I might have said first quarter, but I probably meant 2021. But it was in one of those investor calls that Stephanie, which they say is Q3 2021. So that's probably right. Continue. This article says, from Wrestling Headline says, regarding Stephanie's comments from November, a WWE insider reportedly told Business Insider that they were not seeing the kind of growth while she was around. WWE's insider of Stephanie McMahon's tenure says, quote, "When someone is moved out of the company, it's usually the result of something not working. We took a stronger control of that a few months ago." Now, note that the use of the words moved out of the company. Stephanie, again, has not been fired. After WWE parted ways with Wilson and George Barrios back in 2020, they hired Nick Khan. We already know that. This says Brandon Ross, an analyst and investor at Lightshed Partners, told Business Insider that WWE has made some questionable hiring decisions in the past few years. And he's also seen declines in TV ratings amid the erosion of linear, traditional televised viewing. But on the other hand, WWE has seen effective at drawing and keeping Peacock subscribers. Ross also pointed to how WWE stock is up 34% year to date, in part because live events are showing strength again due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions easing, and how recurring program license revenue is viewed as protected from fluctuations in the ad market. He says, quote, "While there was employee turnover, they generally have the team in place that they want to go forward with, notwithstanding Stephanie's leave of absence," Ross said. Ratings and creative seem to have stabilized. Now they're looking ahead to Raw and SmackDown domestic renewals, which will be settled next year. The big outstanding question is who the bidders are going to be. To that end, will one or more of the streaming platforms want to take a swipe? All right, so that's it. All of this nonsense just to say that people saying that Vince fired Stephanie is untrue, and there is no evidence that he fired Stephanie. There's also no evidence that Stephanie was forced out. There is no evidence of any of that. But there is some questions about the sponsorship deal, which, again, is not something that has been, hidden. If you listen to the investor calls, you know that they were asked about sponsorships and why the sponsorships are under-monetized. If I remember correctly, this Brandon Ross of Lightshed Partners is the guy who asked the question in the investor call. He might be. I think Lightshed Partners actually does participate in investor calls. So WWE wants to have $100 million in sponsorship monies, which, would be awesome. And it seems that they were taking a long time to get there. So quite possibly Claudine Lillian and Stephanie McMahon are going to take it on the chin for this, which is entirely possible. But think about what Claudine Lillian said in her interviews. I wish I could note, I listened to 2 or 3 of them and read a couple of articles just to get familiar with who she was. Not, which of course makes no sense now that she's gone, but she's been there for a year, so she had a lot of information out there. Having to deal with what people think WWE is versus what it actually is a wild concept. Asking somebody to deal with that, and you have 60 years of history and there's all kinds of stuff there, and different clients know different things about wrestling. They may have had a experience with wrestling before, well, specifically with WWE before. So that's an interesting concept, how, and this goes back to what I said before. And, I'm not saying I'm a genius or anything like that. But when I said about the Stephanie McMahon situation and sponsorships, is you have to ask the question whether it's Stephanie and her ability to get these deals done, or whether it's the history of the company and people just don't want anything to do with the company, or just don't want anything to do with the industry. Again, we've talked on this channel extensively about how people in ad companies view pro wrestling. There have been books written on this. There's several hundreds of articles written on this thing. There are people who simply don't trust the wrestling audience. They don't like the wrestling audience, or they just don't like wrestling. So that's the thing that they're dealing with. So if you were told that Stephanie was fired, not true. If you were told that Stephanie wasn't doing her job, well, there's some evidence of that, but we don't know how true that is. All right. So if that don't beat everything, Wrestling Inc. decides that they're going to jump into the ring and report some shenanigans, more shenanigans that they got from Meltzer. So they said the real twist came immediately after, however, with Meltzer reporting that more and more sources had brought up to him that the possible influence of WWE's ongoing antitrust lawsuit with MLW. These guys just, it's a pitch everything at the wall party. Something's going to stick. Just throw everything at the wall. Sponsorships, firings, whatever. Whatever. So it says, fans will note that WWE was sued by MLW in January of 2022, alleging WWE persuaded Fox to nix a streaming deal with streaming service Tubi, which is owned by Fox. What does Stephanie McMahon have to do with the lawsuit? Many who have read it will recall that McMahon was singled out as the individual who reached out to Fox to try and end the agreement between MLW and Tubi. The lawsuit alleged that McMahon threatened Fox with the possibility of losing WWE if the MLW Tubi deal wasn't ended. MLW further alleged the agreement was then terminated the night before it was to be announced. Whether the ongoing lawsuit was the major influence on McMahon stepping away or is just Meltzer's sources speculating is unknown. Meltzer has in the past week noted again that something had changed regarding McMahon's relationship with WWE, and she has been voted to WWE's board of directors just before her leave of absence. She remains on the board to date. So, does that sound like somebody who was going to be forced out of power? Somebody who was voted on the board of directors? That sounds like somebody who would be fired by their dad. Does that sound like somebody who would lose their position due to pressuring Fox to drop MLW? Come on, man. Just let this, let's let this be. It's okay to not know, right? It's all right to not know. It's that simple. When it comes to Stephanie and why she went on leave of absence, it's okay to not know until we get some information, some full information. It's all right to not know. I get it. You know, the wrestling journalist class is into speculation as much as everybody else. It's okay to just not know. It's all right. All right? It's okay to not know. The notes don't end. I thought the notes were over. Then, just as I wrapped up the notes page, well, Paige decided to announce that she was leaving WWE effective July the 7th. She is now considering an in-ring return. Did not mention AEW, but we already know there's the likelihood of her showing up anywhere else is slim to none. Now, Paige, as far as her legacy and her run in WWE, I saw a lot of people acting like, Paige was some kind of a legend or something to that effect. And I think that's mostly what WWE wanted us to believe as far as her potential. Paige came right out of the chute. She was the NXT, still the NXT Women's Champion when she won the Divas title from AJ Lee. I think she won it in like 14 seconds on the main roster. It was just way too easy, and she beat AJ Lee and broke her record and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of potential there for Paige. And there was a lot of stuff that they wanted for Paige. So she was the first one out of the chute when it comes to NXT. Natty had gone back and worked in NXT, so she didn't come directly from NXT. But Paige did. And so Paige was sort of the first anti-diva. The first foray into let's get rid of the Divas era. And it didn't quite work out. It didn't quite stick. She did have some interesting feuds. I remember the controversial feud she had with Charlotte, where she made those statements about Charlotte's brother and made Rick cry and made Charlotte cry, and then she cried about it, and everybody was so sad. But to me, those were the two most interesting things that happened during Paige's entire run. Her beating AJ Lee in her first match and her feud with Charlotte. To me, that's kind of it. Paige had a ton of experience coming into WWE because she had worked with her mom, and she had been working since she was like 14, 13 or something like that in the wrestling business. So she had such a legacy, such a history already. She already had years and years of bumps on her body. No surprise that she got injured, and injuries were a big issue. She also had substance abuse problems and, domestic abuse problems with Alberto Del Rio. She's been gone. She's been back. So to me, she never really fulfilled the potential that WWE wanted for her. I guess you could say in a way she was sort of the female Drew McIntyre, where they had except for she actually won the title on her first night. They wanted her to be the bridge between the Divas era and sort of the women's revolution. That's kind of what they wanted. But she never really got there. And then she engaged in all of that crazy sex stuff with Brad Maddox and Xavier, which you can't ignore it. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that. A lot of the dirt, she was like, what was your favorite Paige moment? But don't mention the unsavory stuff outside the ring. I'm like, well, that's the most, when you think of Paige, that's what you think of. You think of all the crazy stuff she did outside the ring. You think almost nothing but she did in the ring. It's not like she was in there putting on bangers. Her matches were okay, but they weren't fantastic. It was a different time. She wasn't given as much time on the main roster as the girls are now. So she got the short end of the stick. And then when she was able to come back after her short hiatus with Alberto, and she had finally shaken free of him, or the other way around, however that worked. She was able to come back from injury, and she was inspired. Well, she was injured again by Sasha Banks. She got kicked in the back of the head. I think a 6-man tag or something like that. In 2018. They dabbled with her being the general manager. They dabbled with her being a manager. her as a manager, even though I would have preferred for her to try it, we know that she has a very heavy accent, and they probably don't even want to do that. But so that was the last time we saw Paige. I think she was the manager for the Kabuki Warriors, and they had gotten rid of her. They got rid of her pretty fast, too. Almost as fast as Rhea and Damian Priest got rid of Edge. It was pretty quick that they got rid of Paige. So Paige has been sitting at home for at least for the last 18 months. She was inspired by Bryan Danielson and Edge and Kurt Angle and all the other guys that she has saw get neck injuries and fight for their careers and come back. Throughout the last 2 years at least, especially when Edge came back, she was dropping all kinds of hints about wanting to return. It was something that she really wanted to push for. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like WWE was all that interested in bringing her back. I mean, women are different than men. I know some people seem to think that they're not, but they are. You know, also the injuries are probably not the same. So WWE doesn't seem to be interested in bringing Paige back, but she's interested in wrestling. So she's going to part ways and likely go prove that she can still wrestle somewhere else. That's perfectly fine for me. But to me, it must be heartbreaking for her. I'm trying to be fair, you know, because it has to be heartbreaking for her to have been sort of, like I said, the first one to come from NXT to sort of prove what NXT had been doing down there as far as the girls are concerned. And she was the one that was left behind in terms of popularity, in terms of, you know, main eventing WrestleMania, being a big star and all that kind of stuff. Paige never got any of that because she kept being injured and she was very young and too inexperienced in life for the position that she was put in. And she went off the rails, you know, and then injuries just kept coming back, and it was too difficult for her. And WWE got kind of skittish and said, you know what, forget it. You know, you're better off sitting at home. And that's what they've been doing with her. So the last real dust up with Paige was the Twitch stuff, where they wanted her to, you know, get rid of Twitch and everything. And WWE ended up backing off of that because she ended up still doing the Twitch thing. So that was kind of the last real anything to do with Paige. She's not going to be a huge loss. In fact, for most people, they won't even remember that she's there. You know, some people don't even remember that Paige is still on the roster. You know, she's still collecting paychecks and she hadn't done anything. She don't even do like the panels or anything, as far as I know. She wasn't doing like Talking Smack or Raw Talk or nothing. She was just sitting at home, twitching, being a quote unquote ambassador, whatever that means. And, even though I don't think she's probably barely 30, and WWE had put her out to pasture. So I get it. She wants to go out there and test the waters, test that injury. The WWE had did something similar with, what is that, Candice Michelle, where she suffered 2 major, I think, shoulder injuries. And after that second one, WWE was kind of like, okay, whatever. And then I found out, what was this, maybe a couple of months ago, that Candice Michelle was still wrestling years after the fact. That, you know, I thought she had a career-ending injury. No, WWE just kind of just shrugged and was like, look, you're injury prone. You know, we could do about it. But she didn't land anywhere else on TV. She didn't land at TNA or anything. I'm pretty sure Paige will land an AEW deal. It'll be a nice little coup from WWE, especially since she wants to wrestle. They're courting a fan base that will remember her and that will play the game of, you know, what happened in the past did not work, didn't happen here. It's a fresh start. She gets to be herself or whatever. That could work, you know. So I'm not against it per se. I just hope that she doesn't get hurt because, again, women are different than men, you know. Just because all those guys probably took a little something extra and worked a little harder to get back in the ring, not really sure that, you know, Paige can do it. But I'm not going to be standing against her either. So, sayonara. Let's move on to SmackDown. Money in the Bank qualifier, Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus. Ends in a double disqualification. Both guys end up trying to bully Adam Pearce into letting them in the match. It was a very hard-fought match with Pat McAfee talking about who's the alpha after they got to double disqualification. I would normally be frustrated about the double count out or double disqualification because it's seemingly unnecessary. Neither McIntyre nor Sheamus really need the Money in the Bank, but the Money in the Bank kind of needs both of them, you know, because the Money in the Bank as a concept needs some legitimacy put into it, and the more top guys that you have in the match, the better. And since they have few top guys available right now, you kind of need both Drew and Sheamus. So I get why they would want to put both of them in it, but they really should have found other ways to do this rather than have these guys have a really long match that got people involved and then we throw it out with disqualification. To me, that's dumb. And then we really defeat the purpose of even having qualifiers if Adam Pearce puts them back in it or even has a second chance match with them in it. Then it's like, okay, so these matches don't mean anything, right? So to be quite honest, they're not going to do this, but they should just say neither one of you make it. You know, neither one of you get in. That's the fair thing to do. If you give them, oh, we're going to run a rematch. It's like, okay, so then why doesn't, you know, so-and-so get a rematch? Why doesn't such and such get a rematch? You know, it just doesn't make any sense, you know, but that's WWE for you. All right. Lacey Evans, she came back. She said Money in the Bank changes lives. And she's looking at Xia Li like someone telling her she can't do it, but she knows that she can. And as she wakes up, she works hard and she wins. Xia Li says that Lacey Evans is not a winner. She's a whiner, and she's going to leave her whining after the Money in the Bank match. So the match itself between Lacey Evans and Xia Li was a Money in the Bank qualifier. It was, it was okay. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't particularly great either. Lacey Evans wins the match clean with a straight right hand to the face, which was already her finish from her Sassy Southern Belle days. So they didn't even give her a new finish. Whatever. Lacey Evans, I think she's not the front runner to win Money in the Bank, but she probably should be. When you look at when you consider as much time as they put into this character and this persona, and that people are really getting behind it. I know that to do a little aside, the wrestling media is against Lacey Evans. They are definitely against Lacey Evans. They want her to be a heel so badly. Basically, they just have this concept that anybody who is sort of pushing the self-made narrative or pushing something that has to do with the United States should be a heel. And this where we get this really toxic shit like Homelander from, you know, the boys. They are looking for reasons to turn her heel. And they're the one who started this whole Lacey Evans was going to be a heel stuff. I have seen zero evidence, absolutely none, that Lacey Evans is going to be turning heel anywhere. This is just scuttlebutt that the wrestling media has been. It's like one of those things that they constantly do anyway. They constantly try to push narratives. And now the narrative that they're pushing is everything Lacey Evans does is heelish. Like, what was this? Cage Side Seats said that, you know, or was it Fightful, one of the two, that when she pinned Xia Li, she put her knee on Xia Li's face and said, oh, that's not something a babyface would do. I'm like, motherfucker, a babyface wouldn't powerbomb somebody 5 times either. It's like, but Wardlow does it and it works. So who gives a fuck? You're overanalyzing it in order to push a narrative. You know, and this narrative is that Lacey Evans is some kind of secret heel. It's like, what the fuck? You hear the fans cheering for her, just let it be what it is. You don't have to like the character. Nobody said you gotta like it. But running propaganda against it is absolute bullshit. Report what the people are seeing. You know, if you say, well, I don't really like this, you know, this Lacey Evans thing, it's not my thing or whatever. Okay, sure. But from other people, it's working. So you trying to, you know, change other people's opinions by, you know, saying that the character, what they said the character is xenophobic or something like that. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I can tell you exactly when this happened. It happened because the character says that some people like to sit around and complain and whine while she gets up and does something about it. That, you know, she had every excuse in the book to be a lazy, do-nothing complainer, but she chose not to. She took control of her own life. In other words, she was pushing a personal responsibility narrative. The narrative that only you can really change your own life. these people are allergic to that concept. It makes them break out in hives. It makes them itch to hear that you can change your own life and that, some outside force, and they don't believe in God. So it's like a weird, the government or society is required to help you do anything. That's why they believe in rehabilitation programs and prisons and all this other shit. Like, other people have to make you better and lift you up from poverty and all that kind of shit. It's not possible for you to do it yourself. And that's when people started saying that this character was a heel character and that people weren't going to connect with it. Contrary to popular belief, most Americans believe that they can change their own lives. Otherwise, why would you go to work? Otherwise, why would you go to school? Otherwise, why would you do any of the things that you do if you didn't believe that you could actually actively change your own life for the better? Why would you do literally anything? Just sit and rot and wait for the government or society or the church or anyone else to come and pick you up. If you truly believe that, but they don't. It's a politically expedient thing that you get out of these people. And now they've turned it against Lacey Evans. Very strange. I don't know what her political opinions are because I don't follow wrestlers for this very reason. Following wrestlers doesn't turn out very well. Like, I saw the X-Pac thing when it comes to Kane. And I said, you know what? Following wrestlers is just not smart. Mick Foley, they look for reasons to, why look for reasons to not like people, So, and I know that a wrestler's going to be tweeting some shit that I don't like. I just won't see it. That way I can stay at least neutral on what they believe until I stumble across it. But I'm not going to make up a narrative about people that I don't know twist. People believe things that I don't believe. That doesn't make them bad people. Bad people don't just, believe things I don't believe. They're just actively ignorant. And that you could be on my side and still be actively ignorant and dumb as fuck. So ultimately the Lacey Evans character, as far as I know, is not a heel. And all of the talk of her being a heel was dirt sheet garbage. So I spent way too much time on that. Anyway, Ronda Rousey came out there, said that she wanted to prove at Money in the Bank that her armbar was going to be, that she learned from her mother and that she developed and took to the next level. Is better than the janky sharpshooter Natalya stole from her uncle. This led Shotzi to come out there. Shotzi cut a promo saying that she might not have the title match at Money in the Bank, but she's got serious aggression and a killer instinct. And if Ronda Rousey was really a fighting champion, why wait for Money in the Bank? Why not give me a match right now? Ronda Rousey accepted the match. Ronda is still awful as a promo. I mean, my God, her timing on the promo is even bad. She has no bass in her voice. There's no voice in her voice. There's no character, no attitude, no emotion in her voice. It's just garbage. Absolute, just human vomit into a microphone. It's awful. Ronda Rousey is one of the worst promos in the business. She is legit bad. And she wasn't this bad before, so I don't know what happened. Maybe that baby absorbed, like when it absorbed all the vitamins and minerals that she was feeding it, maybe it absorbed what little charisma she had too. Because now she's got none. She's a charisma mummy out there. She's awful. Ronda Rousey is seriously a downslope when it comes to charisma and character work in WWE. And it wasn't this way last time, so I don't know what the hell happened to her. But Shotzi, for starters, she was very loud. Like when she was cutting that promo, she was very loud. But secondly, her voice was really rough, kind of rugged. It reminded me a lot of Luna Vachon. Like she had that sort of, it's a little bit of a growl to it where, it's not quite like Luna. Luna was putting on a voice. But Shotzi seemed like that's her natural, almost somewhat masculine voice. And it just reminded me a lot of Luna. And I say it fits her perfectly. Now, the match itself was actually quite good. Ronda Rousey is better in the ring than she used to be. But Shotzi carried this match a lot. The tornado DDT on the floor was a great move. The kick, of course, that everybody talked about, where the shots he landed that kick on Ronda, that was a great kick. And outside of some really kind of messy issues, especially in the corners, there wasn't too much that was bad about this match, and I really enjoyed it. I was surprised myself that I actually liked this match. Of course, Ronda Rousey wins via submission. The crowd got into it, so it worked. After the match, Natalya put Ronda in the sharpshooter and kind of held it for quite a while. We didn't get Auntie Natty talking in the promo segment, so that was good. Then they started running around telling us that Ronda Rousey is injured. It's like, well, that's just like 90% of the SmackDown roster is injured at this point, because fucking Corbin was supposed to have been injured too, but apparently he's wrestling next week. So, especially after you saw Cody Russell injured, I don't want to hear anything about any injuries. But of course they're playing this game about, will she even make it to Money in the Bank? It's like, well, she better. Max Dupree apparently had travel issues in Europe and will not be available this week to unveil his maximum male models. We'll have to wait till next week. At least they bothered to explain it. I'm gonna give them some credit for at least trying to explain that shit. Gunter wins the Intercontinental Championship from Ricochet, which was good. It was smart business, but it was a fantastic match. They actually pulled out the tail of the tape, which was very interesting and not a regular WWE thing. They were really trying to get over the size difference between Gunter and Ricochet. And Michael Cole was on the commentary. Oh, you know, what's not on there is the heart of Ricochet, the energetic, high-flying Ricochet. They were really trying to push that narrative. And, you know, it was right. It was the right thing to do. The chops, of course, they came, and Ricochet sold them like you know, he went spinning like a goddamn fidget spinner after one chop. The second chop on the turnbuckle, that shit sounded like it hurt. You know, they went out there and they had a hell of a match. You know, they did, and a single powerbomb wins it. And Pat McAfee says, "Thank you for your service as Intercontinental Champion" to Ricochet. Smart decision. Only problem I had with this, they changed Gunther's music again. I am so sick of fucking music changes. I don't care about people saying, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal." You don't get how annoying the shit is. Especially since they just released this fucking song on the WWE theme joint. So people are now finally getting to hear it and really absorb it. And now you went and fucking changed it again. That shit is so annoying. Like these tweaks that they constantly do where there's simply no consistency from week to fucking week is annoying. You know, it's fucking annoying. But Gunter was the Intercontinental Champion, which matters most. Hopefully he gets an opportunity to bring some life into this belt, because this belt died the moment Ricochet took it. Actually, the belt died right after Apollo Crews lost it. I don't remember. Oh, I think he lost it to, who the fuck did he lose it to? Big E? I think he lost it to Big E. Who did he lose it to? Nakamura. Okay, so yeah, Nakamura, when he was the champion, he lost it to Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was good. Him losing it to Ricochet was actually fine. But Ricochet was not giving anything. He was beaten in like 4 or 5 straight matches afterwards. And that killed the title because nobody gave a shit. And people cared about Ricochet in this match because they had done such a good job of getting Gunter over as a heel and as a menace, you know, as a bully, that, you know, they wanted to see Ricochet win and maintain the title. And that's really what you want. But you should have wanted Ricochet to come into this match hot as a guy on a winning streak, even though I think he kind of was, and it was probably like a 1-match winning streak. And a guy with some momentum and somebody you actually build up to fighting rather than somebody you know, you haven't even had your first feud yet and you already beaten him for the title. And that's just seems weird. But everybody who complained about Gunter not really being used appropriately or not being used right, well, internet rumors are that he's impressing the right people. And, despite the name change, they are really impressed with him changing his body and all the weight that he lost, and that him and Kaiser look absolutely svelte. And, they're doing the right thing by him. You know, they're not completely wasting his time. He can't be the world champion right now. So him being the Intercontinental Champion is quite good too. Now, as long as he gets an opportunity to really build around that title, this could work. Now, what does that mean? That means they're going to have to actually get some baby faces hot and feed them to Gunter for at least a couple of months. Personally, I would say you would start with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is a perfect opponent for Gunter, especially if Drew McIntyre not about to be in the title picture anytime soon. Why not do it with Drew and Gunter for a while? I know that Drew is probably beyond the Intercontinental title, at least they want you to believe that. But unless you're going to have him wrestling Roman, you should put Drew into some things that people actually care about. And having him chase the title, even if he doesn't win it. And I'm not saying, a bunch of pinfall losses for Drew. I'm talking disqualifications and countouts and Gunter fleeing from the match and, all that kind of stuff. You could do all kind of gimmicks in order to keep the belt on Gunter while Drew McIntyre can get some heat and before he wrestles Roman. Either that or, you gotta go. The babyface side of SmackDown is just shredded at the moment. I don't know who else you go with at that point. I mean, after Drew, you got the individual members of New Day. Kofi Kingston, multiple time Intercontinental champion. He doesn't really need it. Xavier Woods. Okay. Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston versus Gunter and Kaiser. I could see them maybe going that route. That could be fine, as long as, Gunter wipes his feet on Xavier Woods, I'm cool with that. But the problem is they don't know how to book baby faces. It's absolute. The baby faces are trash, so we're kind of stuck with this situation. Speaking of trash baby faces, they had a video package for the Viking Raiders. I don't know when the last time I even saw the Viking Raiders on SmackDown, so that was weird. Riddle says that he thrives under pressure because this is a lot of pressure he's under tonight, but he's motivated by his best friend, which is Randy Orton, and that he will get revenge on Roman Reigns for what he did to Randy Orton. Paul Heyman then approached Sami Zayn and said that if Sami Zayn wins, he now has, can make a suggestion to Roman Reigns to make him an honorary Uso and say that he belongs in the bloodline. But if he loses, and Sami Zayn's music interrupts Paul Heyman, so he didn't get to say what was going to happen if he loses, but I think it was pretty clear. 16 minutes between when Sami Zayn entered the ring and before this fucking match started. 10 minutes between Sami Zayn hitting the ring and Riddle coming out. They filled 15 minutes in commercials and video packages. Once again, leaving Sami Zayn. This has to be a horrible live experience. This has to be an absolutely god-fucking awful live experience. I know when I went to Raw, the wait wasn't even that long, and it was not a fun experience. That much downtime cannot be fun for the live audience. It's awful. I don't care about all the sponsorships you have to, the commercials, and we got to do in-house commercials. Nah, you don't need none of that shit. Don't send these motherfuckers out there until you have a match, until the match is going to start. Even if you want to go to commercial and come back, okay, cool. But 15, 16 fucking minutes? Anybody who wanted, that's an entire quarter hour. Understand that. These shows are broken down into quarter hours. You took a whole quarter hour of this program and dedicated it to video packages and fucking commercials. Why should anybody watch this? It's horrible to watch live, so I know it's got to be horrible to be in the building. Could you imagine being in the fucking building? And you're sitting here listening to Sami Zayn's theme, and they're running in-building commercials and all this other kind of shit. Maybe this is where they try to sell some more merchandise. But I'm just saying to myself, like, bro, this is so fucking, this makes me heated. I fucking hate this. This fucking sucks. It destroys the momentum of the show. Why would you do that? It's the dumbest fucking shit in the world. Anyway, the match itself was very good. Paul Heyman was on commentary saying that he doesn't make any decisions when it comes to the Island of Relevancy. He only makes suggestions, and that he will make some suggestions if Sami Zayn wins. He was also reacting to the momentum of the match. When Sami Zayn was winning, Paul Heyman was happy. When Sami Zayn was losing, he didn't even want to look at the screen. He kept looking away, you know. So, ultimately, Riddle wins with the RKO, which, you know, some people would complain, say, why is Riddle using all of Randy Orton's moves and all this kind of stuff, and he needs to win and have his own moveset. But you're not understanding the story is that he's supposed to be inspired by Randy, and everything he's doing is in memory of Randy, so he's doing Randy shit. Cool. Now, this means Riddle will get a championship match next week on SmackDown. So Roman Reigns will not be at Money in the Bank. He was not at Hell in a Cell. But random SmackDown in, I don't know where, probably not a big market town. Is it in New York or something like that? Is it in Chicago? You know, likely not. So, but they're going to get Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns versus Riddle. Now, of course, Riddle is not going to win. So what is going to be the outcome? To me, the outcome is the Bloodline is probably going to go apeshit. They're probably going to beat the tar out of Sami Zayn, kick him out officially, probably end up turning him babyface, and they desperately need babyfaces. And they're likely going to put Riddle on the shelf. This to me seems like it's going to be the trigger for the Randy Orton Roman Reigns match at SummerSlam, which is, I'm guessing, was the plan from the beginning. They're probably going to do something in the match where Riddle is going to get absolutely wrecked, injured, and put on the shelf. And then Randy Orton's going to have to make a triumphant return to stand up for his friend. Hopefully that match is going to be at SummerSlam and it will not be at Money in the Bank. Matter of fact, I don't really mind it at Money in the Bank. But to me, that seems like that's where this is going. This is going to be an angle, you know, masquerading itself as a championship match. Probably make Riddle look good because they got to. And Roman can do that. But ultimately, Riddle will fail. And then the Usos are probably going to put a hurting on him. And this is going to lead to Randy Orton's big return, probably the week after that. So, and then you're going to probably maybe have a couple of weeks of Randy Orton calling out Roman before they actually have the match. So, SmackDown was very good. It was a good show. In ring, it was a good show. That losing a quarter of the fucking show to commercials was brutal. It made me not want to watch the show anymore. That legit made me want to change the channel. You know, I was kind of like, man, I should just go to bed. I gotta go to work in the morning. I should just go to bed. You know, this is fucking bullshit. You know, stop wasting my fucking time. You know, time your show better. Fuck all this horse shit about we're going to call it on the fly and waste 15, 16 fucking minutes. Fuck that. Fill that time with something, especially for the live audience. The people who are sitting there, they pay money to sit there and watch this shit in person. Why waste their fucking time? Why do that? That sounds like a punishment. Why do you punish people for coming to your fucking show? Whatever. The show was still pretty good as far as in-ring stuff. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.